Hi and Happy New Year. Kristen McDonald, registered dietitian, back to show you a new recipe. I thought we are starting a new year, so why not show you a recipe to get your day started. I will be demoing banana oat blender pancakes this morning. So before I get into the recipe, I have a pan heating up behind me, and I'm just going to take about a tablespoon of butter and let that melt while I prep the rest of the ingredients. This is so fast that this will be fine while I work on the rest. This is a recipe that I created actually when my kids were really young and first beginning to eat solid foods. If you're anything like me, you might have fed them some different grain cereals, and I was feeding them some oatmeal baby cereal. And I believe I had extra, and we were kind of moving out of that phase, and I decided to try blending it up with pancakes. I call these pancakes, you'll see in my recipe description, and maybe from the demo you can see across the video here today, that they're not quite as light and fluffy as a traditional pancake you may think of. They're almost like a fritter, and that's why I like to cook them in a decent amount of butter. That butter gives them some great flavor, and they're very simple. They use very few ingredients, things you are likely to have on hand. I start with kind of a medium-sized banana, and you'll see that this one is bruised and very ripe, and those bananas that are kind of getting older, sitting in your fruit bowl, are perfect to use for this recipe. Now, I'm using a food processor. You could also try this in a blender. A lot of recipes that say you can use one or the other, I just tend to find the food processor a little bit easier because it has a bigger bowl. It's easier to scrape down the sides, but certainly you could try this with your blender and get similar results. So I just peel the banana and break it into large chunks with my hand and put it in the bowl of my food processor. And then I take one large egg that I've cracked here and add it to the bowl. And I will start by blending those two ingredients together until they form a smooth kind of liquidy paste. Just a couple of seconds here. So I'll take this off and show you. You can see it's kind of whipped up. It's eggy, but also the banana is blended in there. There are no more chunks of banana. So I put the bowl back on, make sure my blade is secure. And complete disclosure, I don't always measure my ingredients. So I'm starting with 3/4 of a cup of oats here. These are just either quick cooking or rolled oats, something that you might use in an oatmeal cookie or that you would have on hand to possibly make for a hot cereal for breakfast. So I've graduated from that baby cereal that I used to have on hand, and the recipe works well with regular oats too. I'm gonna add this a little bit at a time, and maybe 1/2 cup to 3/4 of a cup, really probably depending on the size of your banana and your egg. So I'll add a decent amount of this and blend it up, and then probably end up adding the rest. So my top goes back on, and another few seconds here. I will pause and use my rubber spatula to scrape down the sides of the bowl. I can tell that the consistency is a little too liquidy here still, so I'm going to add the rest of those oats. And I do want it to get kind of smooth, but because I'm using whole oats, they will leave a little bit of a chunky texture still, and that's fine. That's kind of what I desire in the final product here. Again, I'm going to scrape down the sides of the bowl. I love this recipe because I use no added sugar. That very ripe banana is very sweet. Yeah, that's the right amount of oats. It does need a little bit more blending. But the other thing that I add, in addition to the sweetness, is about 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. And this is another one that I don't typically measure. This is the part my kids love to help with. They love shaking in the cinnamon, and I find that they can't really get enough of that flavor, so if they go a little heavy-handed, that's okay. But I'm gonna measure out 1/2 teaspoon, and that looks about right. So I'm going to blend it so the cinnamon gets combined with the rest of the batter, probably scrape down the sides and blend it one more time. one more scrape down, and yeah, it's getting smoother. I can tell all of my ingredients are combined, but there are still some chunks of oats. So this is a way that I have determined is a great dish to add produce at my children's first meal of the day, bananas. Also a whole grain. Rolled oats or quick cooking oats are an excellent source of fiber, which is great for your digestive and heart health. I feel great snacking on these alongside them at breakfast time. They're excellent leftover as well. So sometimes I add blueberries if I have those on hand, the way I would to another type of pancake that I might want to turn into a blueberry pancake, and they like those also. All right, so there's nothing perfect about this recipe. I think the texture is good. I'll try to show that to you. I'm gonna take my blade out here. So the rubber spatula comes in very handy to just make sure that I'm getting all the bits of batter. And you can tell it's fairly thick, a little bit chunky, but all of the ingredients are combined. So you could either use the spatula or a large spoon or a small ladle to then go over to where this butter is melting and get them frying up in the pan. I would fit about 3 in this pan here on the stove at a time. And they take just a couple of minutes per side to cook for like a medium-sized pancake. So I'm gonna let those cook a minute. Another tip I have while cooking these is once I flip them, so they'll cook a couple minutes on the first side, then I will flip them, and then if you use your spatula to kind of mush them down or push them down a little, because it's a thicker batter, that helps even it out and they cook a bit more evenly. I'm gonna try to flip the first one here. My pan was pretty hot when I got started. And I'm pushing them down as I flip them now. And they smell great. So while those are finishing up, I just thought I would talk a little bit about how I said that I like to make sure the kids get produce at breakfast time. And that's always kind of been a rule of thumb of mine. Make sure that I'm either serving them a fruit or vegetable at every meal. And I try to think about that throughout the day. I think about serving it at mealtime, but also my kids are getting to the age where they're looking for things like chips and cookies more as snacks, and I always offer something like an apple with peanut butter, or grapes with cheese, or carrots and hummus as an alternative. And I think our responsibility as parents is often to offer that and encourage that, but also allow some of those other snacks in there as well. I think it's about balance. But yes, making sure that I start the day by offering some produce, I feel good about that, and I've found that the kids love it as well. So let me check on these and show you the final product. Yeah, these cooked up pretty fast here because my pan was pretty hot. So I'm going to serve up 3 of them. So they have a nice golden brown look to them. You can still see those oats a little bit. When I first started serving them, I served them plain and the kids loved them. Then I started putting some powdered sugar, maybe, like I said, some blueberries in there for a different flavor and different sweetness, or with a little drizzle of maple syrup like we would have with any other pancakes. So let me add that and take a bite, see how they came out. Delicious. They have a natural sweetness to them. I taste the cinnamon. I did not add a lot of maple syrup. They're really good with just a small drizzle. And I think cooking them in a fair amount of butter really helps with the texture and flavor of these pancakes or fritters. So I hope you enjoy these banana oat blender pancakes. Thanks.